to episode 34 of Universal Adapter. This is the show where two Brits, one who stayed put, that's me, and one who got out,
that's me,
discuss the relative merits of our current home countries. Each week we'll pick a new topic and discuss who has it better. And this week we are going to be talking about it's that thing that makes the world go round. It's the root of all evil. It is a song by ABBA. Money.
I'm so glad you did the ABBA reference, because that is all I've been thinking of every time. I'm like, we're doing Money. Just Meryl Streep.
Has Mamma Mia 2, Here We Go Again, made it to the sunny shores of Canada yet?
Oh, it has. Because my friend who lives in Vancouver went to go see it. I, unfortunately, have not been privy to that experience as of yet. But I'm not against watching it. I've heard good things, which surprised me. So maybe it's worth shelling out to go see it.
I mean, I didn't think that it was great, but I don't think I'm necessarily the target audience.
Do you like ABBA?
I like ABBA fine, but they use a lot of the songs that I know. Like, I'm not an ABBA super fan. I'm a basic ABBA.
But you're a beginner's level ABBA listener.
Exactly, yeah. I'm a Green Slope ABBA fan. And so I knew most of the songs that were in the first one, but when it came to the second one, I didn't know what they were talking about.
I mean, yeah, I would consider myself, I wouldn't say advanced, but I'd definitely put myself as an intermediate ABBA fan. As in, okay. I have seen a lot of ABBA tribute bands in my time, because it's one of the few bands that my family could all agree on. So since I was probably about 14 to when I left the UK, so 14 to 22, we saw at least one ABBA tribute band a year. But then also, the thing with ABBA tribute bands is they only really do the songs that everyone knows. So I probably would be equally lost with Mamma Mia 2. I'm like, what songs did they not include? I mean, they even put in some ones in the first one that I don't think are very good. So they must be really scraping the barrel at the second one.
Well, far be it from me to speak for Meryl and friends. Tell you what, consider this part 2 of our ABBA Mamma Mia 2 Here We Go Again review, and we'll hear Sarah's thoughts at some point in the future, maybe when it comes out on DVD or when it shows up on Canadian Netflix.
Most likely, although who knows, the weather outside is bonkers, so maybe I will go and just hide away and watch a film.
Which brings us onto the second part of the fun intro, the bit that I had intended to ask about, because I hadn't intended to talk about Mamma Mia 2, Here We Go Again. But you have had about a week, 2 weeks of, I don't know, I'm going to call it ice and fire, or like sun and then clouds. Because you were telling me that you had a lovely time away on a lovely island. Yes,
Cortez Island. One of the Discovery Islands.
Ooh, what does that mean?
I have no idea, but it's sort of like midway up Vancouver Island, and then it's where the west coast of the mainland starts to break into lots of sounds. So there's an area called Desolation Sound. It's apparently very nice.
You wouldn't think it.
I know, shocking. That is a very poorly done marketing pitch. But yeah, apparently it's really nice. It's sort of like the Canadian fjord areas, and that leads up into Alaska.
Ah.
So it's sort of where it all starts to get a bit more hickledy-pickledy on the west coast.
Now, I'm looking at an illustrated map. It's a picture that purports to be a picture of Cortez Island. At the bottom of the map, it says Cortez Island at the bottom. The sun is rising and it's doing a big wink. Now, did you visit Whale Town while you were in Cortez Island?
That's where the ferry goes into. So I didn't go for very long, but I just passed through it.
And most importantly, did you visit on the other side of the island, Squirrel Cove?
I did.
Oh wow, is it
No squirrels.
what? Again, bad marketing. Is Desolation Island filled with squirrels?
Yeah, there's a takeaway called Flying Squirrel Takeaway. Shout out there. They were
What
closed.
do they serve?
No idea.
Shall we now we found out about your Canadian week.
Yeah, we should probably go back to what we're actually meant to be talking about, which is our money. So, we are kicking off our round one with, never really thought I'd phrase this, but I'm going to go with funny nicknames. So, obviously, money is used by lots of people. People like to invent cute names for things. So, we are pitching mine versus Matt's on the cute names sides. So, I have brought with me they've sort of come as a pair, because I couldn't really explain one without the other, but so I bought the $1 and the $2 coins, but more focusing on $2 coins, which were bought in the late 90s to replace the notes, because the coins are easier to put in vending machines. Apparently that was one of the reasons really for bringing in the coin, and I was like, that's a very logical reason, I like it. And they are called, so the $1 coin is called a loonie because on the back of it, it has a picture of the common loon.
Is it like an un-PC phrase to refer to undesirables in Canada?
No, it's not. It's actually a type of bird.
Okay, that makes far more sense.
Yeah.
What I assume that as you're saying this, you're looking at a $1 coin now. You may or may not be, but can you paint me a word picture? What does a loon look like?
I wasn't actually, but considering I work in a shop, I do see a lot of money on a daily basis.
And I brought some home with me today.
So let me just take this week's stealings. No, I don't steal for my work. So it's on a lake, quite a ripply lake.
Mm-hmm.
Above it, I assume, is the sun or a moon, very circular, but not much detail, so I don't know which one it is. In the middle left-hand side, there's some trees getting gradually taller in height along the horizon of the lake. And then we get to the main crux of the picture, which is the loon itself. And it's a diving bird, basically, that come up and they summer in Canada. Yeah, so that's the loonie. And then there is actually a tradition of the lucky loonie, which started in 2002 when at the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics, the team in charge of laying the ice in the ice hockey rink were actually from Edmonton, which is in Alberta. And one of them, a man called Trent Evans, decided to secretly hide a Canadian coin in the ice. And he originally put a dime in, but then as the ice began to freeze, he realised he put it too deep and it was getting covered up. So he then scooted on in a loonie. And that year, both the men's and women's ice hockey teams won gold medals. And then, friend of the show, Wayne Gretzky, he got the honour of digging it up afterwards. So they called it the Lucky Loonie, because obviously burying it in the ice helped the Canadians win in some way. So when they built the 2010 Winter Olympics venues in Vancouver, they put Lucky Loonies in the foundations of all the buildings.
And I expect that Canada? I didn't even mean to say it that time. I take it that Canada won all the gold medals.
I mean, I haven't fact checked it, but I assume so, if the Lucky Loonie did its job.
Of course. That seems a little bit dangerous, putting a coin under the ice when people are going to be skating along at high speeds.
It does seem dangerous to have it so close it's visible. I feel like the dime, fine, no one knew it was there anyway, but the one where they could see it through it, I'm like, seems a bit risky. Also just a bit taunting.
Yeah. You know, what else have they done surreptitiously?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, there obviously isn't much of an authority checking it. But the name that I really liked, and I feel like you'll like it too, is actually the name for the $2 coin, which has a bear on one side.
Nice.
And then a polar bear, I should say, and then Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth on the other side, or was it Her Majesty? I don't know. Lizzie on the other side, and there was lots of debate over what the coin should be called. So some people wanted to call it a berry because like the loon is a loony, bear is berry. One I particularly liked was the doubloony.
Nice, because there are two.
Yeah, excellent. One which I really wish had got on was the moony because it was the queen with a bear behind.
That is top Canadian banter right there.
It's fantastic. But I feel like you'll be just as pleased with what they actually came up with, which is the toonie, which two loonies, it's a portmanteau. Yep. We love a portmanteau on this show. So
and Looney Toonies.
Looney Toonies, exactly. There's just too many wonderful things about it. So yes, I've sort of won the double act, which is the loony and the toonie.
That's excellent. I like them both, but I especially like the moony. That's some excellent wordplay.
And at Mooney, I mean, I was thrilled when I found doubloony, and then was over the moon when I found Mooney.
Okay, so that's a strong opening gambit. There are lots of ways which people refer to English money. Dosh.
Maybe if I was like an in only fools and horses, but
which is quintessentially British. Obviously, you've got quid, you've got bob, but my very favourite was the phrase a knicker bit to refer to a pound coin, and nobody, or a pound note, a pound sterling, and nobody seems to know where the phrase comes from. There are some, and they basically all seemed like guesses at best from etymologists. But some people seem to think that the knicker part of it comes from when people would have been betting on horse races, because that's a word for one of the sounds that horses make. It might be referencing nickel, which was used to make coins. It might be imported from America, where they obviously refer to their 5-cent pieces as nickels, because that's what they're made of. And they also sometimes refer to $5 notes as the same. And at the time that this phrase came into being in England, $5 was worth about £1. So you go from nickel to a knicker bit to refer to a pound, which, if you have £2, suddenly becomes a pair of knickers, which is very good. But the cherry on the cake is that knicker bits is also Cockney rhyming slang for a case of diarrhea. So that's my offering.
I don't think the confusion that would have caused for people.
Yeah, no, we'll leave that for people to do with what they will. But this suffers slightly from me never having heard it until I had to research it for this show.
Well, that's okay. we can't know everything. That's the point of it. We're broadening our horizons. But Nick, but how much horse racing do you go to?
None.
I've never been either. Maybe we should just run in the wrong circles, and that's why we've never heard it.
That is true. As in, we don't run in the circles that the horses run. Do horses run in circles when they horse race, or is it a big line?
No, it's a circle. I think it's quite often a circle. Depends what kind of race you're talking about.
Fair enough. Anyway, before we talk about something which we both admittedly have zero knowledge of, who do we think wins on the slang?
I liked your one. Personally, I just like pair of knickers. That's how I'm always going to refer to a £2 coin from now on. Pair of knickers for you.
There's something a little bit more wholesome, I feel, about the loony and the toonie.
But they also completely missed the trick by not calling it Mooney. If they'd done Mooney, I would have had this.
That's
in the bag.
true, actually.
They just disappointed me. See, you liked the alternative name that they didn't use. That's the problem with it.
Again, I'm happy to take it for a pair of knickers.
Congratulations.
And we will saunter on over into round number 2, as we talk about what was the phrase that you used?
Most interesting person to appear on a banknote. Past or present?
Oh, I made a mistake.
In what? If they appeared on a coin, that's fine.
Okay, good. Then the mistake has been rectified.
Oh yeah.
'Cause-
Well, I just said banknote because none of the coins over here have people on, apart from the Queen. But I'm not going to talk about her.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, she's sort of taken as a given, and also we both have her, so
Yeah, it just would have been a mutually complimentary discussion about her if we'd both picked the same person. So
cool. For mine, I have picked a very well-loved figure in British popular culture. It's Jemima Puddle Duck.
oh, that's not who I expected to turn up today.
I know. I thought
Which coin is she on?
there was a commemorative series of 50 pence pieces that was produced, I believe, towards the beginning of this decade, based on Beatrix Potter characters, and Jemima Puddle Duck appeared on one of them. And as I was scrolling through all of the different people who've appeared on coins and banknotes in England throughout its history, hers seemed like the funniest name, which is why I picked her. And then I started doing the research, and I realised I haven't read much or potentially any Beatrix Potter. And the story of Jemima Puddle Duck is not as charming and fun as her name may have you believe.
Isn't it? I thought Beatrix Potter books were all sort of hedgehogs doing washing.
Okay,
and...
would you like to hear my synopsis of the harrowing tale of Jemima Puddle Duck?
Oh God, I'll brace myself. Yes,
Okay.
please.
So, there's Jemima Puddle Duck. She's a duck. She lives on a farm. She lays some eggs on the farm, and then she's about to sit on them, and then the farmer's wife swoops in and collects them all up because she can't trust Jemima to sit on them properly. She thinks that she's going to abandon the eggs and that they won't hatch, and it'll cut into the farm profits.
Oh my God.
So Jemima is fairly put out by this, and is like, okay, well, I need to find somewhere to lay my eggs where this nasty farmer's wife won't find them. So she goes off walking beyond the bounds of the farm and into the woods, where she comes across a fox
Oh no.
who's dressed in a top hat and tail, and they're walking along together, and he's like, ooh, why don't you come along to my house, which is very safe and secure, and you can lay your eggs there, and it'll be great, and I'll make sure that nobody finds you there. And she's like, well, this sounds fantastic. And she follows the fox to his house, and he lives in a shed, and the shed is covered in feathers and blood. And she's like, seems legit. So she goes to lay her eggs there, and it basically becomes very apparent very quickly, if it wasn't already, that the fox actually plans to turn her eggs into an omelette and then eat her.
Oh.
So things look like they're going bad for Jemima. But, oh, wait, what's this? The sheepdog from the farm has found out what's happened and has come to rescue her with his two little puppies. And they break into the fox's shed and they chase the fox off and they rescue Jemima. And that seems like, if the story ended there, then that would be, I mean, it's Red Riding Hood, but it's a duck.
Yeah.
But
It's a twist.
yes, but then the sheepdog turns around to Jemima and is like, I'm sorry, my puppies are really, really hungry. They're just going to eat all your eggs. And all of her eggs that she's tried so hard to protect and to raise get eaten by the dogs. And that's apparently not a bad thing, because they rescued her and they escort her back to the farm where she, lives out her days, and then probably ends up as farms are mainly for the rearing of livestock to be eaten. So she literally goes out of the frying pan and into the fire. Not within the world or the chronology of the story, but you can infer it from how these things go.
Oh my gosh, that poor duck had 2 clutches of eggs taken from her.
Yeah.
That's Oh,
And
how sad.
and at this point, I'm too traumatized to know what happens to like Mrs. Tiggywinkle.
Yeah, because she's the one who runs the laundry. That's probably some horrendous drowning incident in a vat of clothes.
So there you go. There's story time with Matt. You're welcome.
Jesus. If you ever have children, I wouldn't recommend picking their stories.
Or do, but tell them with the proper context.
Manage their expectations more.
Exactly. Instead of being like, here's a nice story about a fun duck with a silly name. Hopefully, you've picked somebody fun who has appeared on your coin or banknote.
Well, I've gone for a very different tact.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even think of like commemorative versions when I was doing this, so but I don't think they'd have as many things that I recognise. I've picked someone else. Oh, actually, I broke my own rule of past present because she's actually future, as in her note is yet to come but will be released later this year. So it's a woman called Viola Desmond, and she'll be appearing on the $10 note, which also, in a fun twist, is going to be in a vertical format.
What? How? Why?
I think just to make it harder to fraud it, because now obviously they'll have to rejig all their machines
Have to turn them
print
around.
in a vertical format.
Stand them up.
Because all their money all has braille and the plasticky silvery watermark things.
I have a question about Canadian money.
Yes.
Does it smell like maple syrup?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
That was apparently a myth put out that the hundreds smell like maple syrup. And they don't, I'm afraid to report back.
So tell me about Viola.
So she's pretty cool. And also she will be the first black woman and first woman not of royal birth to appear alone on the currency. So she's quite revolutionary, even as a banknote. She was pretty cool. She's from Nova Scotia, born in 1914. So she lived in a time where, unfortunately, not the best civil rights in Canada, but she was pretty pioneering because she basically realised that there were no professional hair care or skin products for black people where she lived, and she wasn't actually allowed to train as a beauty therapist in Nova Scotia. So she was like, I'm not having any of that. And she went off to Montreal and then New York, where she trained to be a beauty therapist. And when she came back, she set up a beauty school for people of colour and also invented her own beauty line and opened her own salon. So she was basically making sure that anyone who came after her wasn't going to go through the same problem. So if that wasn't forward-thinking enough, she has then been dubbed Canadian Rosa Parks.
Oh wow!
And I find it quite funny because in this article I was reading about it, they were like, actually, she did this 9 years before Rosa Parks, as if they were trying to say Rosa Parks was just jumping on the bandwagon of wanting civil rights. And she was in a cinema in Nova Scotia, and she didn't realise that she was supposed to sit up in the balcony section. And instead, she just went down into the main floor of the cinema and sat near the front because she didn't have the best eyesight and she wanted to be able to see the screen, so fair enough. And the cinema manager was like shouting at her that she sat in the wrong place and evicted her. And the tax that she would have had to pay on her cinema ticket was 1 cent more for the seat she actually sat in rather than the seat she was supposed to sit in. So they took her to court under tax violation.
Right.
Ironically, the tax, I quite like the name for a tax, is that this tax was known as an amusement tax, which sort of implies that if you didn't find it amusing, you didn't have to pay the tax.
Every time you laugh, you have to give them a cent.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it should have worked. Yeah, she tried to appeal this, and the judge refused, but it did sort of kickstart that sort of the civil rights movement in Eastern Canada. And she has since been given a pardon in 2010.
Better late than never.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but she was given it by the Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, Mayan Francis, who is also a very proud Black Canadian woman. So comes round in full circle in a way.
Hmm.
And it's a vertical note, which is also very exciting.
Yeah, does that mean that it would be, rather than just a bust, I suppose, would it be a full portrait?
No, it's still just like the head and torso, I guess. But yeah, they just shift the whole thing around. They twist it.
Ooh. And sorry, could you remind me of her name again, please?
Viola Desmond.
Cool.
And she will be appearing on a banknote near you by the end of 2018.
Okay, I feel like if I try and argue that some stupid duck is better than the woman who, as you say, kickstarted civil rights in Eastern Canada, I don't have a leg to stand on.
Well, also, I kind of felt like she was really... A lot of the other ones are all ex-prime ministers, which people are currently having a very strong debate over because, of course, they're colonial prime ministers, but they are the history of Canada. It's a very similar problem to the States, Australia, New Zealand, all of them. So I felt she was one we could all get on board with.
I could have done that with one of the historical figures on the banknotes of England, but again, I chose the person with the funniest name.
Next time, that's what I'll do.
Okay, so that gives 1 point to Canada and 1 point to the UK before we go into our third and final round. But before we get there, it's time to take a little break.
A wee break, and on this break you could go to Apple Podcasts and download our podcast to keep us forever and ever. Another portmanteau while we're on the subject. Learned that the other day. Yeah, and you can also rate us 5 stars. Very helpful, helps people find the podcast, which we're very grateful for. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram under the name Universal Adapter, and on Twitter we are at UniAdapter.
And as always, you can send us an email to universaladapterpodcast@gmail.com.
Excellent.
All right, let's get back to it.
Yeah. So that brings us plummeting into our final round.
Makes it sound like it's all been downhill from the beginning.
I was thinking more in like a booby trap style, like we didn't know it was coming.
Ah.
That's what I'd imagined. The rug has been whipped out from underneath us and suddenly we've fallen.
Yes, so we have fallen into the tiger pit of round 3, where we have to face off against the largest single amount ever been minted into a single note, or I guess coin, although it's probably a note, from our respective countries. So Sarah, what is yours?
Okay, so mine actually is a coin, which
Ooh.
I was very unexpected to find, and this is one that has been genuinely minted by the Royal Canadian Mint, so technically it's legal tender, even though I doubt any store would ever accept this, because in 2007 the Royal Canadian Mint produced the world's first $1 million coin.
Wow. Did you say the world's first?
Yes, as of 2007. Could have been overtaken since then. But yeah, at the time it was the first one to ever been created. And yeah, it weighed 100 kilograms. It was only 3 centimeters thick, but 53 centimeters in diameter. And
Jeez.
It's made up of a substance which is 99999, so 5 nines, fine gold. Which basically means it's like the purest gold they can make, because it is 99.99% gold.
Does that also mean that it's very floppy?
Yeah, because
and soft.
Gold is really malleable, so I assume it has to be very well preserved, because it has, like, they made it look like a coin. It has the queen on one side and some maple leaves on the other. Yeah, and it's just a pure gold coin. So they would have to treat them very carefully, because 5 were actually made, and 1 has stayed in Ottawa at the capital, and then the other 4 have gone off on adventures around the world. But the one that went to Berlin, so it ended up in a museum in Berlin, was actually stolen last summer and never recovered. The gold in it is estimated to actually have a value of $4 million. even though the coin is only worth $1 million. So they imagine it was probably stolen and melted down pretty promptly. But yeah, they've never found it, sadly. So it's now become 5 in the world.
Wow. Maybe someone tried to put it in a vending machine.
So I bought the comfortable sum of $1 million.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to one-up you, because while there is a $1 million note, in fact, several $1 million notes, there are also $100 million pound.
I'm about to say, which country are you representing?
Let me try. Let me just dial that one back. While there are £1 million notes, there are also £100 million notes, which are legal, though they are non-circulating, so they're not sort of changing hands daily.
Oh my god, £100 million note.
And they're not even like commemorative or stunt money. They are issued basically every time a Scottish or Irish banknote or Northern Irish banknote is produced, it needs to be backed up with English pounds in the Bank of England for them to be considered legal tender. So there are 100 million and 1 million pound notes floating around in a vault somewhere in the Bank of England, which are literally just there as security against all of the Scottish and Northern Irish money, just to show England has it covered just in case.
Oh my god, I was so cocky with my $1 million coin. That's insane. £100 million. Crazy. So if they print 1 million Northern Irish notes, they then have to have one of these £1 million English notes.
Yeah, in a vault somewhere, just in case the economy collapses, attempting to pass what exactly is happening here between the different banks of the UK is difficult for me. So I'm not even going to try and justify it, because I will get it wrong. Money is made up. The economy is a lie. The end.
So that was accidentally the most depressing episode we have ever produced. I can only apologise for this reality-crushing realisation.
Anyway, here's Abba to play us out. To wrap up then, before we try and dismantle the entirety of Western civilization, we have the biggest number on the paper, so that's another point for the UK.
That was annoying. I felt really smug when I found that $1 million coin.
Ooh.
Well done. Hats off to the UK for their
Alright, UK wins money.
sterling effort.
Oh,
Hey.
God.
But yeah, fantastic. Even with that horrendous story of Jemima Puddle Duck,
I just
clawed it
sandwiched there in the middle.
I mean, roller coaster emotions on this episode, I'll be honest.
All right, then. In that case, I think that's about all we have time for. Because I need to go to work at some point.
Excellent. And I need to go to bed.
And earn some of that good money that we've been talking about.
Dollar bills, y'all.
Quite so.
Right.
So,
have a fabulous 2 weeks.
Thank you all. Yes, have a wonderful 2 weeks. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
See you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.